Some people follow the rules, some people write their own. Sarah Keller is one of those people. She built a powerhouse career in mortgage and leadership, but she didn't do it the traditional way. She travels the country in a Mercedes van that she redesigned into a full-time living and working space. She's built a life where freedom, growth, and success aren't separate. They fuel each other. Today, we're talking about what it takes to lead from anywhere, how she turned fear into fuel for every big decision, and what it means to pass the torch, to raise the next generation of leaders, including her daughter, who now runs her mortgage team full-time. Sarah, people usually pick one path. They build a business and stay planted, or they travel and step away from work. You didn't do either. You chose both.
I did.
When did you realize that your life didn't have to fit into a single box?
I mean, that part started a long time ago.
And we're here for it.
Oh, I've always told people that I've done everything backwards. And if we're going to go deep from the beginning, I guess we'll just dive all the way in. Yeah. Okay, all the way in. This is why Aiden's not sitting in the room right now, my daughter. I think it really started with her and at a very young age, finding myself pregnant, deciding to have her. I was 22 and working in adult clubs in Portland. I wasn't supposed to have a baby. That's not what you did if you got pregnant. And so I just think from such a young age, I thought to myself, and really truly with that being like that, doing everything differently, it was always that you can't do it that way. And I think to myself, watch me. What do you mean I can't do it that way? And so for so long, always finding a way to do it differently, or backwards was the word I used for so long. I don't think that's the right word to use anymore. But, I'll have a baby and then find a career and then do this. And maybe someday I'll get married or something. I don't know. Maybe not. But that I always did everything backwards. But I think looking at it now, I just always did what everyone said I couldn't do. Still my motivator if you tell me I can't do something.
Yeah, that's insane. That's a crazy story. I think
that's where you're like, I'm like, do you want to start from the beginning?
Yeah.
Because we're gonna go
that's
straight into doing what everyone said wasn't possible, or you're a loser, or you're this, or you're never gonna be that what society tells you you're never going to be, and me just pushing that boundary every single time I can, even now, obviously.
Right. Yeah. So, man, that's interesting. So we started from working in adult clubs, which is big in Portland, right? Like it's that culture is huge.
We're going to listen to this. It's going to be the first thing they hear. But honestly, yes, in Portland, and as a young person going to college, it was how I was getting myself through.
And did you get pregnant with her while you were in that line of work?
Yes, and going to school.
Wow. Okay. So you were in college, you were working, doing that, and then you get pregnant with Aiden.
Which then led to fun things like food stamps and public health care and WIC and patching it together, working multiple different jobs just to keep my head above water.
Yeah. I mean, that I'm taken aback because I wasn't expecting you to say that, right? So yeah, no, I'm trying to gather myself here. And so when you had Aiden, did you go back to working in that industry or you transitioned?
No, never again. After I had Aiden, when she was little, I was working at Gold's Gym as a personal trainer, waiting tables, working at a country club. It was nannying. It was this patchwork of how can I make it? I got my first job in the mortgage industry when she was a year old. I had been looking for a job, and my mom kept telling me if I would just take a full-time job, everything would be okay. Because I had this patchwork of these different jobs, and I was trying not to put her in daycare. So I get this full-time job at a mortgage company. I don't actually know what a mortgage is, by the way.
Right. None of us do before we get in.
No.
Right.
What a mortgage was. But I get this job as an assistant, and I can still tell you that it paid $1,500 a month. Okay.
Okay. Can you tell us what year this is?
This is 2000.
Okay.
And it pays $1,500 a month. My rent is $625.
Okay.
My car payment is $242. The minute I took that job, I lost my daycare subsidy.
Wow.
I lost health insurance. I think I could still insure her through some cheap child plan. It basically, what the math came down to at the end of the month was after childcare and everything, I had $42.
Wow.
I spent a lot of time crying. Woke up at like 7 a.m. Or no, I left the house at 7 a.m. with her in her pajamas in the back seat of the car, dropped her off at the cheapest daycare that to this day I'm like, oh, okay, well, she just got stitches once. It's fine. Everything else is fine. And then would pick her back up at like 6 o'clock at night, make it home a little before 7 through traffic, and do it all again the next day. And it was awful.
Wow.
It's terrible.
So at one point, I guess in your life, did you realize, hey, Sarah, I don't fit into just a normal, like a single box? Kind of like you said, I do everything backwards. Like what point in that
I don't
life?
fit into any box.
Right. How old were you when you realized that?
I think that is something that keeps happening. Or before we started, we were talking about that concept of the way I live now and doing that for myself, and then other people saying you're an inspiration and being a little puzzled for a moment. Like, this is a massive compliment.
Right.
I don't know what normal means exactly, but I've always felt not quite normal or I've felt different. And maybe that's been something that's been for a long time. But when I was younger, that felt like a bad thing. And now it feels like a really amazing thing.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing.
To be normal.
Yeah.
Whatever that means.
Yeah.
So maybe it becomes this more positive thing. Maybe to answer that, it was something I always felt, but it felt like a negative thing when I was younger. And the older I get, it feels
like a courageous thing.
An amazing thing.
Yeah.
How lucky am I?
Right? That I look at things differently, or I see things, or that I have the courage to do things this way and the bravery to do things this way. Where do you think that comes from?
Oh, that my first answer was like sheer stupidity sometimes.
But that's
think of like mountains I've climbed, or crazy things I used to do outdoors. Where does that come from? It feels like something that you're almost born with, or maybe you're given these challenges when you're young. I've been thinking a lot lately about the fact that I grew up competitively swimming from the time I was 8 years old until I was 18, and how I spent this amazing amount of my formative years underwater. Well, not only pushing myself, but all this time in my brain by myself.
Mm.
And I've kind of questioned how that makes me different in some ways. This incredible amount of time alone thinking.
Underwater. Extremely present with yourself.
But there's something about that with like pushing boundaries, or maybe not being part of the crowd. If that makes sense?
Yeah. I think it makes sense. And you're just, like you said, you're pushing boundaries. So when you're underwater, you're present, but then you're also being faced of like, can I breathe for this long? How much longer? This is hard. Can I get through this? But then you're also probably going 1,000 other places in your head at that time.
Boys, I still do that.
That's interesting. So I want to come back to the single box, right? Because you don't fit in one. And so I want to talk about your journey after you had Aiden, and kind of like how you grew into the mortgage business to be as successful as you are. Can you talk about that?
I worked for other people for a really long time. I mean, so much of Aiden's younger life was really about survival. There's not an easier way to say it.
Right.
It was like, we need to survive. Like, what am I going to do? How am I going to hustle enough so that we can make it? And there was also, when she was young, a tremendous amount of trauma, a lot of trauma.
Wow.
And getting her through it, getting me through it. And the trauma piece, at least at the time, and it's something that I feel like I've dealt more and more with as I've gotten older. But at that time, it was like, just shove it down and keep going, right? Survival mode. 100% survival.
Suppress.
Yeah, there was no time to deal with these really big traumas that were happening because it was all about surviving. So I worked as a loan processor, a loan officer assistant. I built up a lot of other people. I made people a lot of money. And some of that I'm grateful for, because when the industry crashed, I still was able to make it. When a lot of people in 2008 that I knew were losing everything, loan officers that had been living so big, and then I watched them lose everything, which was a really good learning moment for when I started to have my own financial success on being very conservative with things, watching that happen. And of course, kind of where I came from. So I had worked as this high-level assistant on a core team, and we did a lot of business. And growing into my own, one more time among many of like, people be like, you can't go do that. Watch me. I'm going to go do my own thing. I want to do it my way. That was the really big thing on the team I was on. I want to do it my way. I'm going to go do it somewhere else and do it my way. Aiden was a little bit older at that time, and she was 14. It was still really, really scary to go off and go do my own thing at a different company, which that company was eventually acquired by Guild. And it was straight up sink or swim, Matt. Like, I had $3,000 in my bank account. The company that I went to work for as a loan officer, now you and I can both laugh about this. They gave me a $6,000 signing bonus.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah.
So I was like, okay, I have 1 month to do something, and then we're going to have a problem. So the pressure was on, which I think is that constantly not just living outside the box, but pushing at those corners of the box all the time, right? I got 1 month. What am I going to do? Well, this is going to have to happen. When I came into this podcast, I was thinking about that too. Well, what do I do that makes that just happen?
What is it? Manifestation?
It is. I think coming into talking to you and thinking a little bit about that ahead of time, it's a lot of faith. Sometimes I'm really, really blind.
But that's faith, though. It's what faith is like. Walking in belief, or faith, or not seeing something but you believe it, or something like that. That's really the definition of faith, right? Not being able to see it, but believing in it.
Yeah.
So, man, crazy, interesting life. So, how did when you got the van, right? How did you know that this was the right path for you and it wasn't just an escape?
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's always, for everyone living in a van, everyone you meet out there living that life, there's always that question of, how'd you end up like this?
In the van.
How'd you end up in the van? And the cool thing is, everyone has a story. There's a reason that everyone is out there. And I know we'll get into my community in that world and how lucky I am. So for myself, I had been with a partner for 13 years and I left him, which was a huge turning point in emotional growth. I had made a very conscious decision to go get emotionally healthy, which has also been a really continuous mortgage conversation of like, well, how did your business get to this level? And when I was with him, I used work as an escape. And there was a certain amount of success because I just was grinding it out all the time. Just any way to like escape how emotionally painful the situation was.
Wow.
Decided I was so sick of myself, sick of hearing myself talk about it, I just was sick of myself. And I went and tried a lot of different modalities when it came to therapy. I don't even want to talk to anyone anymore. I just wanted to be better. I wanted to be better. And the crazy thing was through that process, I dealt with a lot of childhood trauma. I was able to look at my own brother and be like, wow, some of that stuff that happened to us. Did you know that other families are like that?
Right.
He's just crazy, bizarre, like 40-something years old epitomes of being like, whoa, mind blown. Why did it take me this long? Looked at my own relationship and was finally able to see what everyone else saw, which is this is really terribly unhealthy. This is really awful. Left him through all of that. And the week that I left him, I knew I was flying high. I knew the crash was coming, but I was just on a super high. And I went out and I put this $5,000 deposit down on the van. I tell people in my life with him, I did a lot of mountain climbing, constantly backpacking, pushing the limits of some really cool stuff. And when I left, I've told people that I had to daydream up a new daydream. You know, the things you daydream about, you think your life is going to be this, and you're like, oh, daydreaming about the log cabin and the rocking chair and holding grandbabies and still backpacking and hiking. And then I was like, oh, shoot. Okay, new daydream. What are we going to do? So I put this deposit down on the van and it shows up 10 months later. And I go to pick it up and I'm not going to lie. I was like, holy shit, what did I buy? It's so big. Even driving it away, I was like, what did I just do? And I knew that I was going to like the van. I didn't know I was going to love. I didn't know how much I was going to love it.
I heard a lot of things in there. One of the things you said was emotionally healthy. I love that. I think when we go through relationships and we experience toxic relationships, it's something happens in us where it's like, I can't do this anymore. I need to be different. I need to change. I need to change who I'm with. But also it sounds like I might need to change who I was as well. What I mean by that is like, maybe I didn't love myself enough.
You allow it. You look back and I think I've taken more responsibility for the fact that I allowed it.
Right. And I think that, but all that stuff comes back to, I think, childhood, right? You mentioned childhood trauma and the things we learn at that age. And then we get older and then we start this work on ourselves, the heart work on ourselves. And we start to explore who we are. We start to meet ourselves. And then, like you said, you have these aha moments like, wow, that's not normal. I can't believe I went through that. But it's weird how it take life. And I'm sure at the time, because I heard what you said, I had to start all over. You had to begin again. And it took that moment. At the time, I'm sure it probably felt like the hardest thing in your whole life at that time.
Oh, leaving him?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
It felt hard. The hardest thing.
Then I had done some really, really, really hard. We talked about all of it. People listening be like, what the what? Like, I had done some incredibly difficult things before that.
What in that moment, what was the hardest thing for you? Was just the fear of leaving that and not knowing what was next?
Oh, I think I had spent 13 years trying to be really perfect. If I could just be perfect enough, this person would love me.
Wow.
And what felt like love, or what my understanding of love was, which is still very much a challenge for me from growing up, or what was modeled, made it feel like being treated really poorly was love. And So I think I had some really big fears of not being loved, which is the crazy thing is that everything's been the absolute opposite of that. Like, okay, I was like, are we going to have tears during this? And I'm like, oh, okay, here they are. Like, I feel them.
Yeah.
I didn't understand that the other side of all that, I would be so happy.
Mm.
I didn't understand that I would like myself more than I've ever liked myself. I just didn't know that the other side was going to be so awesome. I just thought the way that I was stuck, the way I was living was the way it was supposed to be. I don't know.
Your condition.
That is in a situation that you shouldn't be in. All I can say is that the other side is so amazing. I have moments where I'm so happy my life is not perfect, but I'm so happy. I didn't know it was possible. And when we go back to the business side of things, I could achieve a certain amount of success by just grinding. And everyone here at Guild saw that. But the real success, like when it really, really blew up, was when I freaking let go of everything. Then
Yes.
it got crazy.
Yeah.
Super crazy.
Yeah.
And then I walked away from it.
Yeah, which I want to definitely get into, but I want to come back to that one because I think there's some powerful things in your transformation. A lot of us in relationships that allow ourselves to get treated a certain way. You said I allowed this. Mm-hmm. Don't really know what self-love is, right?
No, it's how we feel about ourselves. I didn't understand. Not that I didn't understand. I didn't like myself. I didn't. There were people that looked at me and were like, you're so rad. Look at everything you've done. But I didn't see that. I just saw everything
that you didn't like.
That I didn't like, that I was doing wrong, that wasn't right, that wasn't, when we started out here, we were talking about that outside the box, that normal. All I saw when we were talking earlier was I wasn't normal. I wasn't like everyone else. It wasn't a good thing.
What did it take for you to realize that all of those things are amazing?
Doing the work.
Yeah.
Doing the work.
And how long do you think that took? It's probably still ongoing to today.
Still totally ongoing. I had something happen a couple weeks ago and I thought, oh, wow. Okay. Yes. Maybe we should go back to some of this.
Yeah.
So, and we all know that we're always growing. If we weren't growing, it'd be boring and we'd be dead.
Right.
And I don't want that.
No.
I'm still always going to be growing. But yes, there was the time period of me like going in and doing this deep work. I had Thanksgiving had happened and embarrassing, but I'm going to talk about it. Spent 13 years with someone that never, ever included me in a family event. It's messed up to tell other people. It feels confusing to tell other people. But it was a Thanksgiving. I had spent it alone, like I did a lot of holidays. Also, wouldn't have wanted anyone to have known that at the time. It was really embarrassing for me that I spent a lot of holidays sitting by myself. And it was Cyber Monday. This is maybe where the magic starts happening. Even then, it was Cyber Monday, and I was always a runner. I can still be a little bit of a runner, right? Something happens, and I'm like, let's run.
Right.
Get out. So I was like, I got to get out of Portland. Where I was living. And I found this wellness resort that was having this Cyber Monday special, Oprah loves it. Oh, cool. And so I booked myself a room. I go to book myself a ticket to leave on Friday. Immediately I got upgraded to first class. So maybe that was my first sign that I was on this right path, on this run. I go to this place and I meditate for basically 3 days straight. You go to this resort and you just pick all day long are different classes and practitioners. And I remember just going to all these meditations, and then I got a massage, and I remember bawling, like just sobbing.
Energy release.
The massage therapist is asking, hey, we can stop, but if you feel like you can keep going, I want you to keep going. I'm like, snotting, dirty crying. And I came back from that couple of days. And this is where I think I've set intentions. I remember telling my closest friend when it came to my relationship, I'm leaving. Don't know how long it's going to take me, but I want you to know that I am. I'm going to go. That was, wow, that's the one that got me. Oof.
Yeah. And I'm assuming because it was scary.
I just didn't know how. I didn't know how I was going to do it, but I knew I needed to save myself. I think I knew I was losing myself entirely, which is also how it came to like living in the van, and the van like showing up, and I wasn't happy with work, and I knew that I had to change something or I was going to lose myself.
And that was how you.
Funny which things are like the things, right? You're like, okay.
Just learn it. You're learning where life, we're learning in real time.
Now, and I tap into it that I'm like, oh, there's a thing.
Yeah, we're learning in real time, which is a cool thing too. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I'm sure everyone else appreciates your vulnerability. So when you said, hey, it was time to go, was that when you left, when you walked out of your relationship?
No, after that Thanksgiving trip?
Yeah.
No, I came back from that, and I had been seeing a chiropractor for years and an acupuncturist. I talked to both of them. One of them got me connected with a somatic therapy, which is trauma recovery therapy. And I was really at this point where I was like, whatever, let's try it. Like, does it involve drugs? Are we doing some, am I going to puke? Like, what are we doing? Like, I will try anything. I'm so sick of myself. And it was, for me personally, it was the somatic experience therapy, the trauma recovery therapy. That was my breakthrough.
Can you talk about what that is? Is that breath work?
It's not. It's actually basically reliving, visualizing traumas and letting your body process them.
Wow.
In my first meeting that I did, this is middle of COVID too, so it's over video. And I do this introduction meeting. I don't even know what it is. I'm like, yep, let's try it. You want, again, at this point, people were like, needles? I'm like, yes. Drugs? Sure. Like, whatever is going to fix me? And I remember doing this call, and he's asking me some questions, and I am rubbing my legs. And he goes, Sarah, what are you doing right now? I was like, what? He's like, what are you doing? And I'm like, down. And there's like some self-soothing things that we all do, right? So the somatic experience therapy, as you're working through these past traumas, the therapist is helping you physically process them. It was really challenging. It was really exhausting. I would feel different things in my legs, in my stomach, in my head, at the top of my head. And we would work through them and let it keep passing. And some of it was very strangely painful. There's a lot of visualization that's happening where you're talking through to the person that you're having, healing these traumas with. For a lot of us, maybe that person's no longer here and alive, or maybe there's really no way to physically confront them in reality. But through this oh my goodness, my brain, through seeing them in your head, and then physically letting that trauma move through our bodies. So we were talking here when we started about Aiden being young, my daughter, and not having the time to process, like just shoving it down. Before I started doing that somatic therapy, I never cried.
Wow.
I didn't cry. I was not emotional. I didn't cry. That started when I was young, by the way. I would bite the inside of my lips until they would bleed. I would not cry. And I certainly wasn't going to let anyone see me cry. So I started going through this therapy, And at first, it's kind of crazy because I can't control when I'm like, so it's like, it was a little difficult. I remember actually being at a guild leadership summit and having to leave the room
Wow.
in the beginning. I couldn't, I had gone so long without feeling anything that I suddenly was feeling everything and I couldn't quite control it, which wasn't always what felt like appropriate.
That's big. There's a lot. You felt your feelings.
Oh, I can totally feel now. It's really cool.
And it's way better on this side, right? It's so addicting once you get here. Like, I think, and I've talked to a ton of people and I've seen it happen where I've had friends like, I don't cry. I don't know how to cry.
Mm-hmm.
And then they do the hard work, right?
Mm-hmm.
They do the work regardless of what it,
Mm-hmm.
what you do. And well, then once they reach to the side, I say you meet yourself. That's kind of what I.
What did I tell you? I finally did all that and was like, oh man, I traveled in the van for about 1.5 years in the beginning, very, very solo. I did not travel with other people. I really needed to be alone. I think that was a continuation of that process where I could feel. And then I realized, hey, I kind of like myself. I'm kind of cool. I'd hang out with me.
I love that you said that. I like myself. I'm kind of cool. I'd hang out with me. I think that is the highest form of I don't know if it's the highest, but one of the highest forms of self-love is when you can say that and you can just be with yourself and say, I kind of like who I am. I'm pretty cool. Like that to me is so empowering.
Well, and it took some experimenting too. That phase of learning that, I was like, oh, hey, I like big earrings. I'm gonna wear big earrings. I do not have overalls on right now. I did not bring any overalls, but you all know I'm wearing overalls all the time.
Straight up.
I was like, I like overalls. I like big earrings. It was just this whole period of self-exploration, trying to, I don't know, what do I like? Oh, I like my hair. It's silly. I like my hair shorter. I like, I don't know, all the way down to clothes and what I liked. And it was an interesting time period.
I love it, but so cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm so happy for you because I think that's what we all deserve. But sometimes we don't know how to get it. We don't know how to get there. And you have to be curious.
Mm-hmm.
You were curious, like you said,
Mm-hmm.
you wanted to give me whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Drugs, therapy, whatever it is. And I think that also takes bravery. That also takes courage to do that too. So I want to commend you and applaud you. And I think it's a beautiful thing that you've found that. I want to transition just a little bit where we live in a world that tells us that we have to choose
Mm-hmm.
to either be confident or humble, productive or at peace, strong or vulnerable. And while that can feel like a tug of war, you can't have one without the other. You've built a life where these things work together instead of against each other.
Mm-hmm.
How do you personally navigate the tension between things like being productive and being at peace?
Mm. Well, it's not perfect.
Right.
I do really well when I can be outside. Or maybe what I would notice about myself when it came to finding the right balance for me was when I was in the beginning, I'd be out in the van for a month and then back, and then 6 weeks and then back. And I slowly started to notice that when I was in the van, my energy, my mojo was up here. And when I was home for too long, doing the same thing every single day, doing the hamster wheel,
Right.
going to the office, living, it's going to sound terrible. I don't know how everybody else does the same thing every single day. Because when I'm doing that, I am down low somewhere. And I just started to notice that difference in myself. And so that balance of finding that peace along with still being able to knock it out of the park was me really noticing where my energy was thriving and where my energy was lower. It's not like a depression or anything. I just started taking notice of where I felt good. And that isn't to say that there weren't days where you're working 10 hours in the van and it's difficult. But more often than not, I can knock out a really long day when I can break it up and I'm outside. And there's not bright lights and beeping and buzzing. It's kind of funny because I'll live, like, I'm not cut off from society. I'm not disconnected. I'm working, I'm talking, I'm on the phone all day long. But I'll go back into a city or full-blown society, or let's say I walk into a Walmart and all the buzzing and beeping and lights will kind of throw me and make me feel really anxious. So the balance, at least for me, is being able to be outside. It gives me that balance, but it's still, Matt, like, it's still difficult, which is also, we haven't even dove into what I just did. It wasn't working for me.
Yeah, and I want to transition into that. But before I do, I think someone told me this a long time ago, and it's been very helpful for me. Whenever I'm going through something, I feel like I'm in a rut or I'm not myself. He told me, he said, just get outside.
Mm-hmm.
Get outside. He was like, there's more space. There's more space outside. And anytime I am having a bad day or I'm having a rough moment, I'm like, okay, I'm outside for a walk.
Yeah.
And I think it's because of all those things you just mentioned. There's no lights, there's no bees, and you're out with more space. You're not confined to.
I don't think we are meant to live a lot of the way that we're living right now.
Right.
I really, truly don't. I can tell you from my own energy, my own mental health, my own being able to function, not function by meaning how much can I do or how many loans can I do or how productive I mean, how can I function in a way that is healthy for myself? Being outside, just that when the sun goes down, you're winding down. When the sun comes up, you're getting, I don't know. We know this science. We know about circadian rhythms, and we're still like, wait, what?
Yeah.
If I lived like that, I would feel better?
Right.
Okay, well, yes, I've tried, and it's true. They were all right.
Yeah, I'm in 100% alignment with that. So I do want to talk about what you have going on now.
Mm-hmm.
And I know you're super passionate about it. And we just talked, you're going to present on this
today.
And everything's going to go great. But
it's going to be amazing.
You've built a successful business
mm-hmm.
in mortgage, right? And for so long, your role was just to be in it every day, to drive, to push, to build. And now you're kind of stepped away and I guess maybe just overseeing it a little bit. That's a major shift. How did you learn to let go of that productivity as your identity and trust that you've built something that doesn't require you anymore?
Well, number one, you asked me when we started the conversation a little bit about that shift, or that I really felt like there is this expectation that you build something or you're good at something and then that's what you just do for the rest of your life. Boom, that's it.
Right.
That's your path. You're done. Oh, you're good at that? That's what you do forever. And so we've got this theme down, How many people told me I couldn't? Oh,
right.
Yeah, watch me.
Yeah.
Oh, you can't be done with mortgages at 48. You can't retire at 48. You can't. Watch me.
Here we are.
Now, there were some really crazy things that happened through getting emotionally healthy and being able to have feelings. I'm much better at being able to hear. And I can hear when I listen.
Yes.
And I pay attention. It's so funny. I was laughing recently. Side note, I was laughing recently because when I'm in the Pacific Northwest, I lead trips to Guatemala every year. And when I'm in the Pacific Northwest, I say I'm like service project trips. And then I find myself in the van in Texas and then in Mississippi. And I'm like, I want people to like me. And I'm like, I just got back from a mission trip, right? I changed my semantics. And so I'm going to do the same thing here because people will use different words to explain what I'm talking about. But when I can listen and hear those messages coming in and I follow them, the craziest stuff happens. Like the most amazing, unbelievable, like the path just opens up in front of me. It's so clear when I listen. And so this big shift, yes, there were people that were like, I was looking for something. Right. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. And people were like, you're crazy. This is what you do. And you're really good at it. And I admit, I'm really good at it. I don't want to do it anymore. So there was that crazy piece, or you're not normal. Like, let's go back to you're not normal.
You're not normal.
Normal would be you just grew this big business and you will do it until you die. But I just can't handle being normal. So I put it out there that I was looking for something, and then it landed in my lap, and like just bizarre, like the investor that is involved in Sackcloth and Ashes, which is my current project, or Change Agents is my current project, is a friend and client of mine. He got involved with the company over the summer. Crazy how it lands all in my lap one night. Totally bizarre. And I remember him asking me the next week, are you sure you're in on this? And I was like, well, I think I'd be nuts not to be in on it because everything led me this direction. And I really think it's when we're not listening, when we override those signs and those feelings and that path, when we go against our gut, is when our lives don't go right.
I love that. I love that. I love that. I think so. Someone, and you're not going to be able to see this if you're listening, but if you're watching on YouTube, a mentor of mine taught me, Matt, you have to remain open. Mm-hmm. And so she goes like this. What happens? She closes her fist like this. What happens when you do this to things, they die, mm-hmm. right? Because you're closed down. Mm-hmm. She said, but when you open up, what happens? Everything grows.
Oh, Matt, I'm always doing this.
Right. And
no one can see me, but I'm palms up right now. I'm very often turn my hands. I'm listening to somebody or something's happening, or I'm driving and I notice something, or I'm on a Zoom with someone and magic is happening. I'll very often turn my palms upwards.
I love that. I read a book called The Surrender Experiment. Have you ever heard of it? Oh, yes. Yeah. She, so you know about this book because I feel like.
Oh, Matt.
Yeah.
You don't understand.
That book has changed my life.
Wow. Okay. You know when the magic happens and you're sitting with the other person, you're like, can I swear?
Yeah.
Like magic shit's going to happen.
Yeah.
So I told you, okay. I told you that I had that Thanksgiving experience and I came back, and then I started these therapies in January of that year, right in the middle of me starting all that. I went to Guatemala, and the trips that I lead down there, mission trips or service project trips, whatever you want to call them, ended up on this trip where I was the only woman, 10 guys and me. And one guy was already a very close friend. Another one in that group, the three of us are the best. Hi, guys. They'll totally listen to this. The best friends that it could ever exist. So, hi, guys. And on that trip, my friend Hayden was like, you really need this book. I remember telling him I'd never seen men crying before, because we would have these really emotional days doing the work we were doing there. And at the end of the day, we would decompress and talk about our high in the day, the low in the day, and where we saw God in our day. And I would watch these men between the ages of 22 and 72 crying. I still didn't know how to cry. And I'm watching these dudes. And I've been with a man for 13 years. I've never seen cry.
Right.
Ever. And I remember having these conversations with them about like, oh, these guys are like teaching me how to feel. That weekend, when we're hanging out, when we're all done, my friend Hayden is like, I was going to order this book for you, but I just think I need to give you mine because you need it right now. Mm-hmm. And that highlighted pencil underlined copy of that book that I've read so many times, Matt, it's in the van. It has my highlight, my pencil underlining, circling things along with Hayden's. Like everything we're talking about right now, everything that I went and did, his story is the same. Like if the magic part or God or whatever everybody wants to call it something different. I really don't care what you call it.
Right.
It's all the same thing. Once you just start surrendering, which also, by the way, is one of my like words.
Surrender.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a cool story. Wow.
That was so that you brought that up. I was like, oh, did we just transport out of this room and somewhere out? Like, what?
Yeah.
I wish I could show you my copy.
I want to see. I want to see it before. Yeah.
Man's not here. It's in Florida.
Okay. Well, yeah. Send me a picture when you get back. I think because when I listen to your story, that's what it feels like for me.
Oh, I completely surrendered. I surrendered a couple of years ago, but I continue to surrender more and more and more. And every single time I do it, the world opens up in front of me in ways that I just wasn't expecting.
You just say, yeah.
I did.
You just say, yeah. And it feels heavy at times. And I see tears in your eyes. I don't know if it's because if there's gratitude in that.
It's huge.
It's just overall.
I mean, I'm gonna stand up in front of 900, 1,000 people today, and I know at the end I'm going to thank everyone in the room because I just get to keep becoming. I get to just
keep becoming.
Yeah, and it's rad.
It is, and it's
a little scary sometimes.
Yeah, but that's
a tad bit scary.
But life's never going to give us something that we honestly can't handle, right? Like life's not, it's just not, it's not. At all those hard moments that you talked about where you're like, I realized I was going to leave and then, your ex relationship and then I'm going to go on the road and then I'm going to leave the mortgage business and I'm going to do, this next venture. It's like, it all feels scary but at times maybe it felt heavy, but it gave it to you because it was the hallway to your next venture.
Well, and the path also seems so clear and undeniable. The path always seems set out in front of me. I feel like I get a little bit of choice, but not very much. Like the path is already there.
Your choice is yeah or no.
Yeah.
That's your choice.
Yeah, but even if I say no later, I'm like,
it's going to come back. Yeah, it's coming back. It's coming back around. But I think the more that, like, yes, we say open, the more you're just going to receive. Mm-hmm. If you just close down.
That surrender piece is massive. And I continue to choose that over and over again.
I'm in alignment with that. I think if you live that way, you'll continue to receive more. So we've got a few minutes left, and I want our signature question is give us your wiggle room moment. I feel like we all have a ton of them, but and I feel like you shared a few already, but is there one specific moment in your life where you were like, this is tight, I don't know how I'm going to get out of here? Give me a moment in your life when you felt like you ran out of wiggle room.
I thought about this a lot yesterday because I had that question. And I can see moments. I think there's different moments. There was a moment when Aiden was little, like 4 or 5 months old, that I had just like, I don't know. Clearly, 25 years ago, they weren't really talking to you about postpartum depression. So, I realized it probably wasn't normal to be sitting on the floor, rocking back and forth, crying all day long for days on end. But I also didn't understand why it was happening. But I remember laying face down in my bed and just being like, I don't know. I don't think I can do this. Am I going to cry getting through this one? I just didn't think I could do it. And there was a lot of other stuff going on. I mean, there's so much more. There were lawsuits and all sorts of insanity and her dad getting in horrible wrecks. And I mean, there was a lot. And I remember, I don't know, I was thinking I couldn't I just couldn't do it. And all of a sudden, this weight just lifted off my back. I don't know. It was like the feeling of being compressed and then all of it just lifting. And so I think that's where I go to that deeper spiritual heart. And then the recent one, the most recent changes, I think I want to share. I thought about it yesterday. And it's hard to share it because it's so heavy duty for me still.
Mm-hmm.
And we're near the end of this conversation and its own conversation. It's a long conversation itself, but and not this last Christmas, but the Christmas before. My closest friend of 25 years, her 19-year-old son was at my house, and we all were there with our kids. He walked out my door at 9:15, and he took his life later that night.
Wow.
And I don't know, my world stopped. Like everything changed. Like this, like, well, how are you doing what you're doing now? Or how did you just walk away from this huge career in the mortgage industry to, are you nuts? Right? Like at the top of your game, you're going to do this. But the reality is that when that happened, I was like, the gift that he gave me when he died was that lesson that it just all changes. Like nothing matters. Like when that happened, nothing mattered. Nothing. And it's never going to matter how many loans I do. It's never going to matter what number I am on a chart. It really never is. And so it's just too short to not leap. The leap.
Dan, leap. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Do you feel like that moment, and it sometimes life has a weird way of like bringing us tragedy in order to help us learn.
He gave me a gift in the most messed up, horrendous situation. He gave me a gift.
Yeah, I think that's where I was headed. Do you think that tragedy in return was a gift that helped propel you to say, I can walk away from the mortgage business. I don't give a shit. I'm gonna go and do something else.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've kept myself from cussing a whole bunch through this, but it seriously was fuck it. Are you serious? Like, if this can happen, if literally this can happen, why in the world would I not be living my life exactly the way I want to? Why does it matter what anyone else says to me? Why does it matter what's normal?
You have a unique way of finding the beauty in some hard things. And I think not everyone can see that. I think people can play victim, but you found a way to find the beauty in things. And I think that speaks a lot to who Sarah Keller is as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
So
I would agree.
Yeah. Man, we're gonna have to do part 2. Like for sure, I for sure want to do part 2 with you because we're limited on time because we're in Texas.
If I open up that right there, but
yeah.
when yesterday when I was thinking on how to answer that for you, that's the most recent. Everything changed. But the gift of everything changing is all this awesome and amazing new things.
I love it. Yeah, I for sure we're gonna bring you back, but maybe we'll come out to wherever you're at.
Hey,
maybe we'll do it in the van. Is there some room in the van for us to set it up?
We've had other conversations about podcasts in the van, but it hasn't happened yet.
For sure, we'll figure out a way.
Create the space in the van.
Yeah.
Where do you want to go?
I think I'll just hit you up and like, hey, I'll come meet you. Come, let's go somewhere, and we'll fly out and we'll meet you. Deal?
You got 100%.
Okay.
I won't even tell you what the itinerary is for the next couple months.
Yeah, I wanna know.
I would love that. That would be amazing.
Yeah. That would be so
really cool thing.
Yeah, it's just another cool thing. And before we get out here, I want to ask you one more thing. If you could give us one piece of wisdom about your life and your work, what would that be?
It would be to listen,
Mm.
to take the risk, to jump with a small parachute.
I like it.
The journey is, it's not, don't let the fear part hold you back. And as I've told so many people, do the damn work. Go do it.
There you go.
Go do the damn work.
Do the damn work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that listen piece. Before you get out of here, do you want to plug your new venture though?
We can.
Yeah, plug it.
Okay. So I am the director of strategic partnerships at Sackcloth and Ashes, which basically I run a program, a corporate gifting channel through Sackcloth and Ashes called Change Agents. Sackcloth and Ashes is a one-to-one giving company with a mission of localism, which is so near and dear to my heart. So if I sent you a blanket, a donation blanket would go to the homeless shelter we're partnered with closest to your zip code. Partnered with over 600 shelters throughout the United States. And I truly, you'll hear me talk about it today, I so wholeheartedly believe in this idea of localism and the fact that the biggest impact we can make is in our own communities. Honestly, doesn't matter who the president is, what administration you have. Like, most of us aren't going to make a difference on a national level. You are going to make a difference where you live. You can make a difference where you live. And I believe in that so strongly that I walked away.
I love it, Sarah. I love your story. So powerful. I can't wait to give you a hug in a moment. But yeah, and it's not a surprise that what you're doing now is involved giving, and so yeah, just thank you for being you, and thank you for listening. I think one of the biggest takeaways for me in Sarah's story is surrender. Surrender, and how it opens life for you, and how it can change things for you, and her resiliency and everything else that came along with it is so powerful. So if this story resonated for you, or if you know someone that might resonate with, please share it with them. Please like, subscribe, because we want this to continue to grow so it can relate to people who need to hear it. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you soon.